Welcome to part 1 on our series of yoga, mindfulness, and body-based interventions. We will start each session with a short exercise so we can begin to notice how these things feel in our body. So before we begin today, let's pause and check in with yourself. You might look away from the screen or close your eyes. And take a moment. Notice, what are you feeling? What is present for you in this moment? And now we're going to practice a 3-part yogic breath. You might place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. And begin to take slow, deep breaths. So inhale, let your belly fill up, your chest fill up, even up into your shoulders, and then long exhale, shoulders, chest, and belly. Continue with this deep inhale. And a nice long exhale, shoulders, chest, and belly. Let's do this one more time. Inhale fully. Nice long exhale out. You might release your hands down and pause and notice. Now, what do you feel in your body? Is anything a little bit different? When you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes, bring your awareness back into the screen in front of you. So welcome, thank you for joining me in this journey. This is kind of our introductory session where we're going to talk a little bit about the basics of what we're doing in this series. So first of all, who am I? My name is Dr. Jessica Gladden. I've been a social worker since 2003. And I've been teaching yoga since 2016. And one of the things that I do in my psychotherapy sessions is I integrate a lot of this body-based work so that we can use different ways to incorporate all of our body and all of our brain into the healing process. So I'm very excited to be sharing some of this with you for this training. So you might be wondering, who is this training for? There's many people that this can work well for. So for some of you, you might be professionals in the mental health world or in the yoga world. This will be a great introduction to how you can combine those two different pieces to have a more holistic way of working with people and their body. So how is this series structured? Today we're doing just an overview of yoga, mindfulness, and body-based interventions so that you know what it is and why we're using this instead of a different format when we're working at interactions with the body. Our next section will be looking at an introduction to trauma that will really focus more on what happens in the body when trauma takes place. We're going to take one session to look at neurobiology and the role of the vagus nerve. So we will look very specifically at this one part of the body and why that's important with this kind of treatment. For those of you who are very involved in the yoga world, we're going to do a series on trauma-informed yoga, where we will look at what trauma-informed and trauma-sensitive yoga is that might be different than your typical yoga classes. Similarly, we will do one section on trauma-informed mindfulness, where we will look at mindfulness and meditation and how to make this more trauma-informed. And then our last set of videos will be more example sessions. So we'll do a few yoga classes that work with different areas. So we might do one class that looks at yoga that works with anxiety. We might do one very gentle class that looks at what you can do if you're working with someone with limited mobility. So we can explore how we can use yoga for many, many different people. So first of all, we need to know what are these body-based interventions. So our body-based interventions work through the physical body and the sensations in our body to interrupt the way our body has adapted to trauma and stress in unhealthy ways. So we all have coping skills that we've learned throughout our lives, and some of them are wonderful ways of using our body, our breath, or other coping strategies. Some of them are not so healthy ways. So we're going to be looking at some positive, healthy coping techniques that involve the body. This will include yoga, mindfulness, and other activities that can work with the physical body to shift some of these mental patterns that are taking place in our minds. Some of the more physical examples of this are yoga, dance, and Tai Chi. So with these different kinds of physical mobility exercises, we're going to be looking at doing things in a different way where we're slowing things down. So we're not looking at power yoga where we're looking to get fit. We're looking at a slow, conscious way of taking our yoga practice into our body so that we can feel the sensations and connect the sensations in our body to our emotions. We're also going to be looking at breathing exercises. Our breath is one of our best tools to work with our body when we're coping with these different things that have taken place. Our breath is one of the best things that we can control and that we can use to shift our body's physical patterns. In one of our parts of this series, we will look at progressive muscle relaxation, and we'll give a short example of what that feels like. You might be exploring massage or self-massage as a way of incorporating the body into some healing interventions. There are many, many different mindfulness and meditation exercises that we can also explore using for people who need a little bit of extra support in their mental health. And then last, there is a version of meditation called eye rest or yoga nidra. So yoga nidra is the yoga of sleep, and eye rest is one specific format of yoga nidra that has been created specifically to work with trauma. This was created originally to work with trauma in military veterans. So these are some examples of different body-based interventions that we will be using. We will specifically be focusing a little bit more on yoga and on mindfulness throughout this series. So what are we doing with these different body-based interventions? We're basically creating a way that we can rewire the neurons in our brain to shift what's taking place in our body. The first part of this is to create awareness in the body. When we have awareness in the body, we're creating the opportunity for neuroplasticity, which is basically a really fancy word for change. We're finding ways to rewire our brain. So there's a saying that neurons that fire together, wired together. So the more we practice doing something, we're creating those neural pathways so that our body can learn a new way to process. With these practices, our attention is being shifted. We are moving towards the individual's internal experience, the feelings and sensations in the entire body, instead of just the thinking process that takes place. When we do this, time will naturally slow down. When you look inside and feel inside yourself, we can slow things down in a different way, and this intervention will allow your body to connect in a new and different way. We can start to build trust in our own bodies and create the ability to believe in ourselves to make effective actions and changes in our life. So, when we're looking at treating mental health challenges such as trauma, anxiety, or depression, we're looking at building a safe relationship, creating more robust interoceptive pathways in our brains so that we are able to be empowered to experience our body as a reasonably safe and predictable place. So a couple of words that might be a little bit new that can be really useful to understand a little bit better. There are several different types of sensations. Exteroceptive means that this is the nerves that are related to our five senses. So this is where we are gathering information from outside the body. This is where we're seeing something, we're touching something. We have that connection through our senses to what's happening outside of us. When we're looking at interoceptive, we're looking at the nerves that relate to what's happening inside our bodies. So this is how we are finding an embodied sense of ourselves. What we want to have is a dual awareness, both of these things happening at the same time. So we have exteroceptive and interoceptive awareness both taking place. We see and understand what's happening around us, and we can connect that to how we feel inside our body. And then one other term that might be useful for you to know, proprioception. So this is the awareness of one's body in relation to the space around it. And when we have people who've experienced a great deal of trauma, what often happens is this kind of goes away. We don't feel safe in our body, and we don't have that connection to what's going around outside of us. So this is actually a time when you might see people that are a bit clumsy, that bump into the wall or the desk or are tripping a lot because they don't have that connection to what's going on outside the body. One more thing that is important to know as we begin this discussion is that there is a difference between trauma-informed and trauma-sensitive. So for our trauma-informed work, this is any time that an exercise is being performed by someone who has the knowledge and awareness that some people in that group or in that room may have experienced some kind of trauma. A trauma-informed class can be taught by anyone who has a general understanding that people have experienced trauma and they may have different reactions to what is being offered because of that experience. So this might be your typical yoga teacher who's working in a studio and has an awareness that some of the people in the room may have experienced trauma, and they may be able to incorporate a few things into the class that's useful for everyone there, but particularly for people who have had that past experience. On the other end, when we're looking at trauma sensitive, that means that the exercise or activity is being performed specifically to assist people with some kind of mental health challenge, whether it's trauma, anxiety, or something else. So our trauma-sensitive class or our trauma-sensitive work is going to be taught with someone with clinical experience. So this is going to be your psychotherapists, your people with a master's degree or a PhD level degree who have been working with people with trauma and other mental health challenges for a longer period of time. And then they may also be using some of these body-based interventions, such as yoga, specifically to help with that work. So for example, I've been doing psychotherapy on and off for 20 some years, and I also include trauma-sensitive yoga into my psychotherapy experience. So that sometimes looks like individual sessions, that sometimes looks like a group yoga class that is created specifically to work with some of these symptoms. So throughout the next couple of videos, I hope that we can spend some time to learn about these different areas and that you can have a better idea of how trauma and body-based interventions can work together and how we can use yoga, mindfulness, and other activities to help people who may be experiencing some kind of mental health challenge. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.